Jovan, Buha! Buha!
Yo, yo, I'm Jovan Buha, Lakers beat writer for The Athletic, and welcome to another Lakers postgame reaction show. I just got back from Crypto.com Arena where the Lakers beat the Memphis Grizzlies 128 to 123. They got their lick back, and now they are 7-4 on the season, 6-0 at home, their best home start since the 2010-2011 season. This was a wild one. LeBron James became the oldest player in NBA history to post 3 straight triple doubles. Dalton Knecht had a career high 19 points. Anthony Davis hit some big shots late after what I thought was one of his more disappointing starts to a game this season through the first 3 quarters. But he righted the ship late, and the Lakers got a much-needed win before their NBA Cup matchup with the San Antonio Spurs and Victor Wembanyama, who just had 50 points tonight on Friday in San Antonio. So a lot to touch on with tonight's post-game reaction. But before we get started, you guys know the drill. For those listening and watching on YouTube, please be sure to hit that subscribe button, turn on channel notifications, and like and comment on this video. For those listening in the morning on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your podcast platform of choice, please be sure to follow, download, and leave a 5-star review. So this was a wild game because the Lakers' performance really swung quarter by quarter. So a really impressive opening quarter. Lakers score 38 points, have a 12-point lead. LeBron hits this walk-off buzzer beater to close the quarter. And it feels like the Lakers have made the most of their 2-day break and in playing another undermanned opponent. Memphis was without Ja Morant and Desmond Bane, arguably their 2 best players, or at least 2 of their top 3 players. And looks like Lakers are going to come out and take care of business. Then they get outscored 70-53 across the second and third quarters. And this game just completely flips on its head. And it goes from looking like a promising win and another get-right opportunity for LA to one of the more recent disappointing losses for them, just given the opponent and that they're at home and who their opponent has available. And Memphis is one of those scrappy teams. LeBron and JJ both talked about it. JJ before the game, LeBron after the game, of like, it doesn't matter who's in the lineup. Memphis always is playing at a high level, and they always figure out ways to keep games competitive. But still, this was clearly a game the Lakers, in my opinion, should have won. And then the fourth quarter, so late in the third quarter, with at the 3:51 mark, Anthony Davis picks up his 5th foul on a Jaren Jackson Jr. drive. And we're going to touch on the big man situation because it is certainly a problem for the Lakers right now. But with no one really to come in to replace him, or just Christian Coloco as a 2-way backup option, LA goes small for a little bit there in to close the third quarter. They'd also gone small to close the second quarter, and they're able to tread water and keep the score basically the same. Christian Coloco comes in, he gets a couple of dunks, and I thought played much better in that second shift compared to the first shift. And then the Lakers end up actually regaining the lead going in early in the fourth, and then AD comes in. And he hits a free throw line jumper, hits a couple threes, gets downhill, gets to the free throw line. And I'm also, during that stretch where they regain the lead, Dalton Knecht goes absolutely unconscious, and he hits, starts the game 6 for 6, hits 5 threes, and had his best game of the season easily. And then the Lakers put it away ultimately in the fourth quarter. So let's get into our 3 takeaways. I think the 3 takeaways are relatively straightforward, but takeaway number 1 is LeBron James. That's the takeaway. I'm not going to say much else with it. Like, LeBron is just ridiculous. This guy's about to be 40, year 22, and it is. His performance is continually overanalyzed, and there's been a lot of hot takes and wild opinions with LeBron this year. At the beginning of the season, I said when he got off to the slow start, like let's be patient with it. He has the Sacramento game, and he's had some monster games along the way. He's now had 3 straight triple doubles. To do that in general is impressive, but to do that at his age and with his mileage and with the workload and everything, like it's exceptional. It's incredible. It's remarkable, whatever adjective you want to use. But tonight I thought was the best of the 3 triple doubles. I thought it was probably LeBron's best game of the season. 35 points, 12 rebounds, 14 assists. Did have 6 turnovers, but was so efficient. Otherwise, 13 to 22 from the floor, 4 for 7 on threes. And I thought really carried the slack with AD having a rough go, especially through the first 3 quarters of struggling with foul trouble and just not really, to me, again, this was probably AD's most disappointing, at least like disappointing 3 quarters of the season collectively. So AD had a really rough start, but LeBron kept the Lakers in it. And he talked about it after the game of like, just right now, the rhythm that he's in, he's seen everything and he knows the flows of a game and he knows when he needs to make a big play, get a dunk, hit a 3. So after this game, LeBron is averaging 24 points, 8 rebounds, and 9 assists, I think 9.2. That is the second most assists he's averaged as a Laker behind the championship season. And he's shooting a career high, nearly 46% on threes and nearly 79% at the free throw line. So even in year 22, LeBron is setting career highs from a shooting perspective. When we saw this last year when he shot a career high 41% on threes. So he's just continued with that. I don't think he's going to stay quite at 46%. That's like peak Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, Steve Kerr, like best shooters of all time. I think LeBron will come down a little bit, but could he stay in the 40 to 42% range? I think potentially. So LeBron has been awesome. And again, people want to, like, he's in this battle rather, with Father Time, and people are waiting for Father Time to get the win. That they're waiting for him to be up against the ropes, and it's not coming anytime soon. And of course, there will be nights. He's had some nights where it has been either rough defensively or his shot just hasn't been there. He's missed layups he maybe makes in the past, or he's had some rough shooting performances for sure. But LeBron is still LeBron. He is still very much the player that he was last season, and I think the starting lineup change, it's no coincidence to me that the starting lineup change, I think, has spurred him being more on the ball, and there's been a greater intentionality within the Lakers offense of getting him involved and having him run the show a bit more compared to as much, what was on, or compared to the workload that was on AD's plate. I think LeBron it's balanced out a bit now, at least on the offensive end of the floor. So LeBron had just an awesome game and continues to play at a really, really high level. And I think the Lakers are going to need that moving forward. They do have a relatively easy stretch coming up here, but they need to bank these wins. And I think the one thing that LeBron also deserves some credit for is, like, he continued to play really hard, and JJ continues to point out, like, just how hard LeBron is playing in comparison with his teammates sometimes. But tonight played center. He had entering the game, he had played center approximately 1% of his possessions, according to Cleaning the Glass. And tonight ended up playing about 4 minutes at center across the early part of the second quarter and the late part of the third quarter. And the Lakers were +4 in those minutes with LeBron at center. I mean, you could technically say LeBron or Rui was the center, but LeBron was defending. I think one shift was Jay Huff, one shift was Jaren Jackson Jr. So, like, whoever was the nominal center on Memphis' side, LeBron was defending them. So and really positions are more of a defensive distinction. You more like, because offensively, LeBron's positionless offense. I mean, he's really positionless on both sides of the ball, but like, Jokic is the point guard for Denver, but he's obviously a center defensively. So it really, to me, like that was the fact that they were able to have some success in those smaller lineups. And I thought the smart thing that JJ did, I don't remember exactly both lineups, but I know one of them was LeBron, Rui, Dalton, Austin, and D'Lo. And I like that he was just like, okay, we're going to put our best 5 offensive players with AD off the floor, and you might score on us, you might get more rebounds than us, but we are going to be hard as hell to defend with those 5 guys together. And I think that should be the strategy. And we've seen it in the past, the last Vogel year, and at times in the Darvin era. Like when you go LeBron at the 5, you just pretty much want to outscore the opposing team and make it really difficult to match up with and hope that they downsize. And Memphis actually did downsize. I think at least in the second quarter portion, they went a little bit smaller. So again, great stuff from LeBron. He's playing at a really, really high level right now. And the demise of LeBron is premature. He's not there yet. He still has father time on the ropes right now. And it looks like he can do this for at least a couple more years, however long he really wants to, if we're being honest. Second thing, though, let's get to our second takeaway. And this is more of a negative one because it is the Lakers have a big problem on their hands, at least in the short term, with the front court depth. So we got news today that Jackson Hayes sprained his ankle in practice and will miss 1 to 2 weeks. He arrived to the arena in a walking boot, which is never a great sign. He did tell ESPN that he is optimistic, that the pain has gone down, and that he's hopeful that he'll be back on the shorter end of that timeline. But we could look at the other 2 guys that are out as evidence that guys, for whatever reason, tend to be out longer than expected with the Lakers, and whatever that initial timetable is, that they tend to be. And remember, like Christian Wood has now said he's back twice, and then the next day there's been some type of setback. So that yesterday there was a setback with Christian Wood, or at least we were told about it yesterday, where JJ said at practice that Christian Wood is now going to be reevaluated in 4 weeks after suffering a setback in his knee during the ramp-up process, and that there is no update on Jared Vanderbilt, even though we were told approximately a week ago that we would be getting a update on Jared Vanderbilt this week. So that seems to be no timetable with Jared Vanderbilt. Christian Wood is out at least 4 more weeks. This is now a setback despite having 2 knee surgeries in approximately 8 months. And having setbacks on your knee during that ramp-up process, it can be relatively normal, but like it's not a great sign. So I'm not expecting Christian Wood back. I mean, we're here mid-November. He's probably out through, I would guess, into 2025. I mean, maybe late 2024 on the optimistic end. But I'm banking on Christian Wood being out. And Vando, again, we're mid-November. If you guys remember, that those that have been watching me for a while, I said the second we got the Vando update at the beginning of training camp, I was like, he's probably out through at least mid-November. And we're here now, and he's still out. So with Jackson, it does seem to be, like JJ said again, pregame 1 to 2 weeks. So we'll see. But I would bet on it being closer to 2 weeks than 1 week, just based on the Lakers' recent track record with injuries. And so that's 3 of their 6 front court guys, including both of their backup centers. And of course, they have, in my opinion, their 3 best front court guys in LeBron, AD, and Rui. But they've obviously had to go small. And Christian Coloco did have a solid second shift, but I thought that first shift was kind of rough. And to me, like, he's shown some positive signs with the finishing, with the rim protection. I think he's still getting his legs under him. He's still getting NBA reps under him. I think he's still learning the Lakers system. And I think he's still somewhat of a development project. And like, can he tread water for 12 to 14 minutes a night, especially with the upcoming schedule? Probably. But as we saw tonight, the Lakers, like, AD got in foul trouble, and the Lakers actually decided to go small, and Memphis wasn't able to make them pay. But like, if Ja Morant is in this game, I think Memphis potentially wins it, and potentially wins it at that juncture, just because of who the Lakers had available to them. So again, this might be a 1 week thing with Jackson Hayes potentially coming back at that point. Jared Vanderbilt could be coming back at some point this month, and maybe those concerns are quelled by those guys coming back. But at least for the next week, with matchups against San Antonio and New Orleans, and then I don't remember the matchup to start next week, like, the Lakers have a bit of a problem on their hands in terms of front court depth. And this was something we saw coming entering the season. Like, I think even if those guys were healthy, there might be some level of concern with the front court depth. But to have Vando and Christian Wood both not healthy starting the season, and the team is not really done. I mean, they did add Christian Koloko, obviously, as a two-way guy, though that seemed to be more of a separate move, but they did ensure that he would be on the roster in a two-way capacity. And they did add Quincy Oliveri once he showed out in the preseason. Obviously, he's a guard, so I'm more so just speaking to like the team trying to add talent. But right now, I mean, this is a problem, and they barely got away with it tonight. And AD had one of his, I think, one of his worst games of the season, still at 21-14 in 3 blocks. But the Lakers, like, this is something that, especially if this Christian thing lingers and the Vando thing lingers, I do think they have to seriously consider making a move sooner than later. And even if it's not exactly on the timeline that they initially projected of like early to mid-January on the early end, and even if it's a little bit of an overpay, I think this team has shown some real potential here in the first 11 games, and it would be, in my opinion, very disappointing for them to not invest in it with the proper front court help and depth. And you can't control injuries, so Jared Vanderbilt has a setback, Christian Wood has a setback. Okay, like, that is what it is, but you can't control how you build the roster to some extent, and I think they certainly could use some help in the front court, and I think that should be now a pretty high priority, if not the biggest priority, in terms of how they build this roster moving forward. So that to me is like, I always try and come with at least one big picture takeaway. That's been the big picture takeaway for me is, and it's pretty obvious, right? Like they had to play a guy who's now played 2 games in the past 18 months in Christian Koloko, and that's just for as much potential as he might have. I don't think he's quite there yet. It is nice for him to get reps, and maybe he continues to grow, and he looks much better a week from now than he does right now. But I think right now they're like barely treading water with him on the floor, and I think that's not ideal for a group that has pretty high aspirations. And then the third takeaway from tonight, before we get into the Q&A, is Dalton Knecht. Dalton Knecht has the best game of his career up to this point. 19 points, 7 of 8 shooting, 5 for 5 on threes. This was the performance that JJ's been talking about Dalton as a top 1% shooter in the world. This was it, because Lakers were running him off screens. He was running across the baseline. He was taking really quick shots in transition, and he was scorching. And this was like it gave this group, I mean, JJ said it after the game, like he swung the game. He saved the game during that stretch of late third into early fourth. And then the Lakers closed with him. And I really like that group. And it's a group that we've talked about on here before, of the 4 primary starters with Dalton in that 5th spot. And I think that was largely just because he was shooting the shit out of the ball and it looked really good. So that's why he was part of the closing group. But I would like to see that group play together more, of Rui, LeBron, AD, Austin, and Dalton. I really like the way that it looks. And yeah, I think Dalton was a team best plus 17 in his 31 minutes, led the bench. Was really, like, again, Christian, I thought, had a good second shift. Gabe had another really rough game, 0 points, 0 for 6 shooting, 0 for 4 on threes, 2 fouls. He's basically Tony Snelling it, plus 6, but I don't, like, he had, I mean, Scottie Pippen Jr. was beating him off the dribble. Like, if he's not making shots, he's not defending. I thought he had some good defensive moments, but if it's not consistent enough and he's not really a game changer on that end, it's really tough to play him right now. And then D'Lo, I thought, took a couple of bad back-to-back threes during Dalton's stretch of being on fire. And it was kind of weird that he smoked a layup early in the 4th. That was like just a point-blank, wide-open transition layup. And then did hit a big 3, though, and that was the point where the Lakers regained the lead. So he did plus 5 in his minutes. But JJ did shorten the leash with D'Lo tonight, only played 20 minutes off the bench. And it seems like what I will say with JJ, like Cam played 22 minutes, and it does feel like JJ is doing a really good job of just reading the game and like who has it tonight, who doesn't, who are they exploiting, who are they attacking, who's struggling, and let's adjust the rotation. So tonight it was starter heavy as it tends to be, but Cam, T. Morse minus 12 in his 22 minutes, and it was struggling out there. And then D'Lo didn't really have it either. 8 points, 3 for 9 shooting. So they go with more Dalton. Reduce Gabe's minutes as well. He was just under 13. And then Christian played like the bare minimum for the backup center at just under 13 as well. So I think JJ's done a really good job with the rotation. But with Dalton, I've talked about it. He has not shot the ball well outside of that Cleveland fourth quarter. He shot like this was the positive regression. We've talked about him being due for this type of, I mean, maybe not 7 for 8, but like he's been due for some good shooting performances. And like you just see that the bar has been so low for the Lakers with shooting over the last few years. Like the crowd goes wild. Like that was the loudest the crowd was all night. What was Dalton hit a couple back-to-back threes, and just like the plays he was making, the crowd was going crazy. And just the impact though with the bench and with the confidence and just he gave the group a lot of juice. And you saw like this is what Dalton is capable of. This is why the Lakers took him at number 17. This is why they've been high on him all summer, entering the season. This is why he was guaranteed a rotation spot. And he came up big in a really clutch way for LA in the second half. So some big minutes for Dalton. I think this is a really nice learning experience for him, something he could hopefully take moving forward and continue in terms of his progression and his confidence. And I think the Lakers could also look at this film and look at ways to continue using him offensively and getting him open. But just wanted to Dalton deserved a big shout out after this one, just because I think that the combination of like LeBron carried it the first like 2.5, 3 quarters, also had some really big plays in the fourth, but then Dalton, that stretch, late third, early fourth, AD comes in just under the 7-minute mark with the 5 fouls. And then he goes on a tear of jumper after jumper after jumper. So LA, really high level execution, some good ATOs from JJ. Again, I think JJ pushed a lot of the right buttons, and this was a good win against a Memphis team that is kind of like they're kind of like a zombie. Like they're always injured, but they entered the game 7-4. That they're always finding ways to remain competitive. They had 7 guys in double figures, 29 for Triple J, but then 3 other guys with 15 plus, a couple other guys with 12 plus. Like they're just a deep team and a team that figures out ways to adapt within the game. So that will do. That will conclude our 3 takeaways. Let's get into the Q&A portion. I know we got a couple of super chats. First one from Jay Hoodie. Thank you for the super chat. I've seen enough. No more Gabe minutes. It's time to reinsert Max. He's not putting up 0 everything like Gabe. I know Max has played bad, but Gabe is playing like Bronny. Crying emoji, laughing while crying emoji. Also, a center is very needed. So the second point, I will say, I almost just recreated your profile picture there for those watching with the hand on the head. But center is very much needed. I agree. I think that they need another backup option. I mean, of course, Jackson will be back at some point, we would assume. And I don't know about Christian anymore. So I think they'll have a quality backup. And maybe this ends up being a blessing in disguise where Christian Coloco gets some really valuable reps at this point in the season. Like this is why they signed him to that 2-way, was for an opportunity like this. So it could end up working out with Christian Coloco. As for Gabe, I'm with you. And I've said it the last couple games. I've been trending toward Max just replacing Gabe, because if like Gabe's really been struggling and Max was also struggling, but Max is 6'6" and Gabe is 6'1". Max is a solid rebounder. He's not rebounded the ball up to his normal level this season, but through the first couple of years of his career, he's been a solid rebounder. He's been a 41% catch and shoot guy over his first couple of years. And I think he's someone who takes this very seriously. Not that Gabe doesn't, but like I think Gabe actually also takes it like very seriously. But I think with Max, it's like he's also had some time now to take a step back, look at his role, look at where he's been deficient, look at where he's struggled, and I think about it and work on it in practices and work on it with the coaching staff and film sessions. So I think with the way that Gabe is playing and the Lakers and him, like you really, with Cam now in the rotation and with the Lakers having so many ball handlers already, and with them empowering Austin and AD in addition to LeBron and D'Lo, like it's not like Gabe's out there for his ball handling or initiating the offense. And then point of attack wise, like sure, but I think Max can do a lot of that, and you already have Cam out there to do that. Then some of that's also gonna come down to Austin doing that. So I don't really see the argument other than Gabe being, other than like you hoping that he finally has some positive regression in terms of his shooting and his play to like the Miami version of him. Like that's really the only thing I could think of, because I think his defense has been solid. I wouldn't say it's been quite good, and it's certainly not been great. And if he's not going to be making shots and then he's playing like fine to solid defense, that's just not getting it done. And they don't really have an alternative, because it's not JHS, it's not Bronny, it's not Maxwell Lewis, and that's even a different position. I think it's Max Christie. So I would make Max the ninth man right now, or maybe technically eighth if Christian Coloco's the ninth man, and give Max another shot. I don't think that's going to happen. At least I think Gabe would have to have multiple, I would say multiple bad games in a row. He's had multiple bad games in a row. It's basically been all season, but I think he'd have to continue to, he'd have to miss like 25, 30 shots in a row and really play at an even like lower level. It's possible, but I feel like JJ has an affinity for Gabe. I will say he's reduced his minutes, so that's like because I think people have compared Gabe to Torian, and I mean Torian was better than Gabe. Like that's not even really a comparison. But in terms of like the coach's like favorite guy, but and it took a while. It took 50 something games for Torian to move to the bench and to have his role reduced into like a more proper zone or area, whatever. At least JJ's been reducing Gabe's minutes. He has been playing fewer minutes the last 3 games, and he is becoming more of like that 8th, 9th guy. So I think that's a step in the right direction, but I still think it's going to be a leap to get Gabe entirely out of the rotation. But I do want to ask him about Max and sort of like how he views that competition potentially, because I think we are getting to the point where Gabe probably shouldn't be playing, and I think Max at least deserves a shot. And if he continues to struggle and doesn't play better than Gabe, then I guess you could go back to Gabe. But right now, I mean, he's statistically he's the worst player in the NBA, according to some of the advanced stats. I don't think he's been quite that bad, but he's not far off. And it's been really rough. Like I've defended Gabe at times, but it's kind of gotten to the point where I'm out of, like, I can no longer defend his play. So I'm with you. Let's see. Next one from Justin Tyndall. Are you trying to grow a mo? I'm guessing you're asking mustache. I'm not. This is my like 2 days without shaving. I do not really grow facial hair. And I was considering shaving before the show, and I was like, I don't even know if they're gonna notice, but I guess you guys did notice. But yeah, I'm rocking a little bit of a stash here, a little bit of a, but I don't really grow facial hair, so I hope you're not offended by my facial hair. But yeah, this is me growing it out. And then next one from Harry Chainani. What do you think of the Lakers getting Dwight Howard as backup center? They need a bruising center to battle with guys like Nikola Jokic in the playoffs. Lakers won 2020 championship with AD at the 4. Thank you for the super chat. And also thank you, Justin. I don't remember if I thanked you or not. So I was actually talking about this with a scout pregame about the center spot, and we were going back and forth with different options. And they were saying a lot of the center options that are out there, they feel like aren't really worth a first round pick. and that a lot of the names that get attached to the Lakers that they feel like a first round pick is an overpay. Robert Williams or Walker Kessler or Jonas Valanciunas, Jakob Poeltl, any of those types of guys that like you could talk yourself into a first round pick, but it probably is an overpay based on just like straight up value and also value to the team. Cause almost all those guys, even throwing in Brook Lopez, like almost all those guys theoretically would be better as like backups to AD and then playing together maybe in like the middle portions and not necessarily starting next to AD. So they were just making the case that if you're going to start him or if you're going to bring them off the bench rather, like, is that really worth a first round pick? I think so, but yeah, I think a lot of smart people disagree with that, and I'm open to that discussion and conversation. Now, with Dwight, I actually did this like I want to say like a month or so ago, like early in the season, might have been the preseason. I was asked about Dwight. Dwight's a popular name. I think at this point, Dwight is done. I think if like teams could theoretically use that player. And you look at a guy like Bismack Biyombo, kind of a similar profile, even though Dwight obviously, historically a much better player, but even recently, like I think the version of Dwight we saw with the Lakers or the version of Dwight we saw with Philly, like that player was a better player than say like a Bismack Biyombo. And that's someone who has struggled to find work the last couple of years. And I just think if anyone knew how good Dwight Howard was, it would be the Lakers, who have now had him 3 times, including twice in the last 4 years. And the fact that they have not really been interested in bringing him back, I think I'm going to trust them on that one. That if it was as simple as clearing a roster spot and signing Dwight Howard, I think they would do that. Maybe I'm wrong on that. Maybe I'm giving them too much credit on that. But I would just say, like, I think at this point, Dwight is, and even that I thought he had some good moments that last year and had productive stretches, but like you could already tell he was on his way out of the league. And I don't, if it was 2020 Dwight, sign me up. That guy is better than Jackson. That guy is better than Christian. That guy would really help this team. But I don't even think the third shift third stint with the Lakers, he was as good as that 2020 version. And I think people often reference that, but like that Dwight is gone. That JaVale is gone. Like there aren't many guys that could do what those guys could do in terms of being lob threats and rim protectors, like at that level on minimum contracts. That's tough to find. And every team could use those types of guys, but there aren't many of them. The Lakers just happen to have 2 of them, in addition to AD, who could do both of those things, in addition to all the other things he could do. So I think Dwight is, I don't want to say cooked, but the pan is on, and he's getting there. He's rare right now, but he's getting to medium rare. He's going to be medium well soon. That he's going to be well done, and I think he's pretty much there. So I don't think Dwight is the answer. And as I'm seeing people in the chat talk, like Jokic is, I think that's the other thing is like people will reference 2020 Jokic. If you think 2024 Jokic is in the same ball, like 2020 Jokic was really, really good. All NBA player, all-star player. 2024 Jokic is like historic. I think he's playing at like a top 15 level of all time over the last, like from the championship season to last season to this season. That's like all-time stuff from Jokic. So I think it's a little different. Henry Kellen, hey Jovan, could you do a video with your ideal rotation using Crangis's spreadsheet? That's a really good idea, and I've actually I want to hear from you guys, and maybe it's worth doing a community note of just like what type of content you want to see. Like I try, obviously I interact with you guys, answer your questions with the live streams. I try to do a mailbag every like couple of weeks, and then I also try to do get one guest-driven episode per week touching on different topics. But some of the solo shows that I do typically one a week. Sometimes I try to figure out like what's the best video to do, what's the thing that the audience wants to hear about or know about or whatever. So I I think that's a really good idea, diving into the rotation. And I see more shows of Kranjis. Certainly, I know I had done a couple shows with Kranjis, a couple shows with Trevor. Want to get Sean back on here soon. Want to get Pete back on here soon. Going to get Anthony Irwin back on here soon, and try and cycle through the people that I've already had on. Also some new people. Also, I'll be bringing back on Kobe Price. And if there's any other guests you guys want to, Julian Chan, I see you saying, can you invite one of the players? Yeah, I've had, it's tough to get players on here. So I've had Austin and I've had Max Christie. Of course, would love to have LeBron and AD. Those would be, I think AD is more realistic between the two. I would love Bronny. I think that one's going to be hard to get, but I've had conversations with certain guys about it, and it's just kind of typically a scheduling thing, and them doing a podcast appearance is very low on the priority list. So it'll always just be like, oh, I got invited to this, or oh, I'm going to go shoot at the gym, and like there's nothing I could really say back to that in terms of like, okay, well, I guess let's reschedule, and then it keeps kind of getting pushed. So there's certainly some guys I've talked to and would love to get on the show. So if you guys have any ideas as to the chat always cracks me up as to who you would like to see me talk to. Of course, I know Bron, 80, Bronny, but maybe I'd love to Austin. We more so focused on Hillbilly Bogey. I'd love to have Austin on for a basketball conversation. Would love to actually have Max on again soon at some point and talk about his season and sort of how he's dealt with everything. Like we haven't really, because he struggled, we haven't really talked to him at practices and games and stuff. It's been more so talking to other guys, but certainly would love to get a player on soon. Would love to get some people from the coaching staff on soon. A lot of hoops you got to jump through, whether it's team PR or agents or whatever, and a lot of barriers to it. But I am trying, and I would love to get more players on. It's easier in the off season, and that's the one kind of challenge during the season. But certainly would love to. Like I think Quincy Oliveri is another one that I think by multiple interactions with him, he's been like, he just has this radiance and this energy to him that is so rare. And he goes and shakes every reporter's hand, and he's got this energy to him that I think is great. So maybe he's one. I'm seeing Lamar Odom. Dalton's one. I think that could be potentially possible. Sasha Vujicic. Okay. Yeah. So I'm seeing a few Dalton ones. So Dalton, I've been considering doing a Q&A with him for the Athletics. So maybe I can parlay that into into both maybe. Okay. Another super chat from Harry. Why is Bronny only playing in the home games for the South Bay Lakers and not the road games? Not sure how it helps with his development. It's a good question. So obviously there was the reporting today from ESPN, and then the Athletic followed it up. And my sense with the situation is there's certainly some level of preferential treatment going on, right? Like I don't think it's necessarily entirely uncommon for certain guys to only play in the home games. I think the problem is that tends to be first round picks or guys with a certain status. And I don't think Bronny has earned that status from a playing or like performance perspective. Obviously late second round pick, and we know the ties with his dad. So it's, I think it is doing him a disservice, in my opinion. I think he should be playing as much basketball as possible and should be playing as much with the G League and developing as much as possible, getting on-ball reps, getting game reps, getting minutes. I understand. I think an element of it is certainly like you're flying coach and you're traveling on buses, and like it's not the most glamorous situation. If it's really, there's some security concerns, and if that's really an issue, like he could fly private, although at that point you're flying separately from the team, and that's kind of weird. You could have additional security. Like, I think there are workarounds, and maybe they get so much backlash from it that they end up changing the plan. Like, my understanding is it's just the current plan. That doesn't mean, like JJ said, everything with the G League is very fluid, and that they're constantly kind of evaluating the development plan with the players and want to make sure that everyone's on the right track. So maybe they get enough backlash from this report in this situation that it ends up being a little different, or maybe there are certain road games that he travels to. I will say, it kind of depends on the point of the schedule. Like, I think there's also value in Bronny being on the road with the actual team, and even if he's not playing, I think there is just something to being on the road with the group, the camaraderie, the team dinners, the going out with guys, doing activities with guys, and being in those road environments. Like, even, I never played the NBA, of course, but like I've observed it firsthand. And then I would also say, even going back to my playing days in like high school, it was always a little different. Like, playing at home, you want to go see your friends after the game, or if you have a significant other, or you have homework to go do, whatever. When you're on the road, it's like it's you and that group, and it's a different level of bonding and camaraderie. So I do think in some of these instances, if it's like not him, if he's not going on the road because he's going on the road with the Lakers, I think that's different. But if it's just simply like, well, he's not going on the road and he's staying with the team in LA and he's just kind of like living his normal life and like not playing on the team, that's a little different to me. Like, I guess it's more for me like a case by case basis in terms of like the road trips that he is or isn't going on. But in general, I think giving him this type of preferential treatment, I understand it. I understand why he or his team or whatever would want him to potentially not travel on the road. And again, I think there are some legitimate security concerns. At the same time, I think it is doing him a disservice. I think it should be him in the G League with these guys on the road, taking the bus, flying commercial, and like getting that gritty experience, and like just kind of that the under, like, I don't want to say the underbelly, because that kind of almost makes it sound negative, but it is like, he right now is a G League guy, and that's his reality. And I think if they really are going to go out of their way to say that this isn't nepotism or this isn't this or that, like, then he should be on the bus. He should be flying commercial. He should be doing the normal things that the other guys on the G League team are doing, and not like Jalen Hood-Schifino is going to do those things. Maxwell Lewis is going to do those things. Christian Coloco is going to do those things. Quincy Oliveri is going to do those things. Like, go down the list. There are guys who are better players or have better pedigree that are not getting that treatment. And that's where it gets a little, because like, you can't really say he's not getting certain treatment in other regards, but then have this situation and then be like, well, this is an exception for that, but everything else is like normal. It's kind of like, it almost undermines that whole entire argument. So maybe this leads to them just admitting that certain things are going in his favor or whatnot, but like, it's also tough because like I haven't gotten to know Bronny that well, but like, he's a good kid from what I've been able to gather. Like, we have a mutual connection in that we both went to USC, and I can tell like he's a good kid. He works hard. He cares about this. He wants to be good. He wants to improve. He wants to be better. So I know like he gets a lot of unnecessary flack that I don't think is deserved for someone who's that young and just at the beginning of their career. So this is this is like its own podcast topic probably, but if we bring it back to like a development perspective, I think Bronny needs as many games, as many minutes, as many reps as possible. And I understand there are certain arguments for maybe why not, but I think you should at least go on like a couple of trips minimum, and we'll see. Maybe they end up changing the plan. Dark Galaxy, thoughts on Quincy deserving a shot instead of Gabe? keep getting Quincy questions, and I feel like having the same answer of like, I think he's worth a shot. Clearly there's maybe he hasn't been as good behind the scenes in practice as he has been in games, but like the 2 games he played a lot in, he looked really good against Milwaukee and against Golden State. And then his G League debut, I was there. I was there to cover Bronny, but Quincy Oliveri stole the show. 28 points, 10 rebounds, 6 assists, and looked like an NBA player. And like that, I don't. If Gabe, I'll just say if Gabe is in that spot, I don't think Gabe is putting up that stat line. And there's more to it than that. But I feel like Quincy is someone who he brings a certain energy and spirit to the group. He plays within himself. I don't think he's not out there taking shots. He's not chucking. He's not a me first guy. And he picks up 94 feet, and he's a defensive playmaker. So I would like to see Quincy at some point get a look. And I think right now, at least from what we've seen in games, we obviously haven't seen the scrimmages and the practices and that behind the scenes stuff on like a daily basis. I think he has looked better than Gabe. Now that there is a big jump from Summer League and preseason and G League to the actual NBA level, the level of competition, the athleticism, the speed of the game, the pace, all that stuff. So there's certainly a chance that Quincy gets a shot off the bench and he struggles and he looks like he doesn't belong. But I would like to see that and test that out, especially with how poorly Gabe has played for a majority of the season. So I'm with you. That might be another, like, I've been going back and forth on, do I want to ask about Max or Quincy? And then sometimes a different question. Like you kind of have, it depends on what order you get picked on. Like sometimes if you're one of the first people picked on, there's kind of an obvious question. Like tonight, I was the second person to go post game with JJ, and it was like, I got to ask him about LeBron. Like, what have you seen from LeBron in 3 straight triple doubles? What happened tonight? What's happened in the last couple games? Like, how would you assess all that? And that was just the question I kind of had to ask. So but I would like to ask about Quincy. I would like to ask about Max, and I think I'd like to see either one of them take Gabe's spot right now with the way Gabe's playing. Okay, let's see. I'm gonna do about 10 more minutes or so. Ricky Burt, thank you for the super chat. Good thing is a lot of teams have center issues right now. Yeah, a lot. That was another thing that I was talking to someone or talking about with someone pregame, was a lot of teams need centers, and that's probably not a great thing for the Lakers. Like on one hand, maybe in like head-to-head matchups, it helps because certain teams have a lack of depth at the center position, or they have centers that aren't very good, or they have injured guys. So that maybe helps in like head-to-head competition, but it also probably hurts them logically on the trade market, where the prices for centers will be maybe a little bit higher than one would expect or that they should be. So that's a bit of a concern. But yeah, I mean, if you go roster by roster, a lot of teams could use a better backup 5. And it does feel like there's a lot of talent at the top of the league at the center spot. Jokic, AD, Embiid, and you could go down the list of, Sabonis, Bam. There's a lot of Wemby, depending on what position you consider him. I guess he's a 5. Cat has been playing really well. Like you could go down the list of all NBA, all-star level centers, and then you could go to like high level starting centers. And then it does feel like kind of after that initial 30 to 35 guys that are like starting caliber, the drop off to the backups is like pretty steep. And there aren't many teams that have a quality starter and a quality backup. It's hard to find. So every team's in the market for another center, or not every team, but like a lot of teams are. And that is going to drive up the price. So the Lakers could beat that by potentially striking sooner. But if they wait January, February, those prices are probably going to be higher than one would assume. Another question from Kane Carter. Thank you for the super chat. why won't Rob do a trade? Thoughts on Aaron Nesmith? I like Aaron Nesmith. I think that I want to pull up quickly his basketball reference from this season, just so I'm aware of his averages. So he's averaging 23 minutes a night, shooting 53%, 55% on threes, low volume, less than 2 attempts per game, 9 points, 4 rebounds. Yeah, I like Nesmith. I like, for me, the big thing with him, it's the size and the shooting. It's just hard to be a guy like, or guys that are 6'6" and shoot the way that he shoots are valuable. I think he's solid defensively for the most part, and I would be interested in him. Like, if you could add him and Miles Turner, I don't think Miles Turner is going to be available anytime soon, but that would be awesome. Adding another wing and a big, like, I think that type of adding a big and a wing in the same deal, I think would be awesome for the Lakers. Now, as for why won't Rob make a trade, I think Rob was very transparent at his media day in terms of saying, I want to see the first 30 games before I want to assess this team at the 30-game mark and then decide if I want to make a move or even which guys I want to keep, which guys I want to trade, what positions we need, what deficiencies we have. So I think that's been my understanding of the way that they've been trending. Now, I think at the same time, you have conversations, and if a trade pops up that you're interested in sooner, you obviously will pull the trigger. But there's certain restrictions right now where certain guys can't be traded till December 15th, certain guys can't be traded until January 15th, and certain teams don't have a sense of urgency in terms of making a trade until closer to the trade deadline, when they actually have to make that decision as to, okay, which guys are we keeping? Which guys are we making available? What are the prices for these guys? So, like, there's a lot of moving parts with it. I know it's easy to pull up the trade machine and just say, why don't the Lakers make this trade or this trade? I think it's a bit more complicated than that. Now, I'm not absolving them, Rob, or the front office, of not making a move, because I've been beating the drum of, like, I thought they should have made a move at the 2024 trade deadline. I thought they should have made a move last summer, or this past summer. So I'm not absolving them of any criticism, and I'm not justifying them standing pat, because I thought that was a mistake. I thought they should have built the roster over the summer. So I think two things can be true. Like, they're in the position that they're in now, so I'm assessing it from that perspective. But I do think they should have made a move either at the 2024 trade deadline or over the offseason. They didn't. I disagree with that, but it is what it is. They're here now, and I think there's a chance they make a move at some point between now and January, but I would still look at more January or closer to the trade deadline as them really assessing, okay, here's where we are, here's who's tradable, here's who's not, here's the prices, and then moving forward. So I don't think it's, Rob, I'm sure on some level is aware of the criticism or the fan base constantly asking for moves and trades and stuff. So I'm sure if he could wave a wand and make a trade, he would do that. But I don't think it's as simple, because you also, like, the Lakers might be desperate or aggressive in trying to make a move, trying to figure something out. But, like, a lot of teams right now are still going through their own process of, again, evaluating their roster, their assets, and, like, the direction of the team. And every team starts the season optimistically, except for a few, right? So realistically, we could pull it up, but most teams, at least right now, have a shot at the playoffs. I don't think no one's been eliminated from the playoffs yet. A few teams obviously know that they're not good, or they're tanking for Cooper Flag or whatever. So they're the exceptions, but everyone else is like, let's get in the play-in, let's make the playoffs. And until you get to that 30, 40, 50 game mark and guys get injured, like, the Pelicans are an interesting one, because that's a team that on paper looked like they had some playoff potential. Half their roster is injured, including Zion and some of their best role players. So, like, maybe that's a team that ultimately pivots and maybe pivots sooner than later. But realistically, I think most teams want to give their groups 25, 30, 40, 50 games to really assess, these are the guys we like, these are the guys we don't like, these are the guys that are available, these are the prices, and then move forward from there. So I think it's more so like just a league thing of, there's a reason why we haven't seen any trades here since the season started, right? At least unless I'm forgetting one, but like at least from the regular season starting, like that's just not how the NBA, kind of transaction cycle works. It tends to be, there might be a trade or two that happens in like December, around that December 15th mark. And then they'll obviously start to be more in January. And then there's the flurry right before the trade deadline. So I think that's more likely for the Lakers, but they're still going to canvass the market. They're still going to try and do something. They're still going to look for a big. I just think you need two to tango with the trade. And I don't think those other teams are necessarily, unless the Lakers overpay, which is a possibility, but it seems they've been very cautious with trying to trade picks. Unless they overpay, I think the more likely scenario is it probably going into January. But again, we'll see. Maybe they end up getting desperate enough and they overpay and they give up a pick and a swap or a pick and a second round pick or whatever for one of these guys that they've been linked to since the summer. I am a little skeptical of that happening, but could certainly be wrong. Okay. Let's see. Lakecan Solarin, thank you for the super chat. You did not put a message, but I appreciate you supporting the channel. King Carter, do you have a sports nemesis friends you disagree with? Not really. I mean, I'd say the person I talked to most, and I think it showed in our podcast together, it was Kobe Price. We sit next to each other at games and we talk a lot. We kind of go back and forth, but I think we largely actually see eye to eye. I don't have a sports nemesis or someone that or a friend that like I disagree with vehemently. I mean, I think that the most controversial thing is probably like Jordan versus Jordan versus LeBron, but that's really it. Okay, Harry Chinani, thank you for the super chat. What do you think the NBA can do to address the point differential issue for the in-season tournament? Star players are playing during garbage time to get higher point differential to advance to the next round. Yeah, I mean it's certainly a potential concern. I think from the Lakers' perspective, for example, with AD banged up with the foot and the eye. I don't know if you guys saw. I should have tweeted it out. I didn't. I took a picture of his eye. Like his eye was like the left eye was completely not completely shut, but like close, and it was very red. And just him talking, like he could barely keep it open. He said light was bothering him. So I look at that situation. It's like, okay, if the Lakers are up by 20 in the fourth quarter against San Antonio, do they keep AD in and put that workload, put that risk on him to try and keep that point differential high? Or if it's the inverse and like they're down 20, do they keep AD in there to try and make up for it and like sway that point differential? So I think it's really a team by team, player by player situation. Of course, you're going to have like, with anything, like there's situations where a lead gets blown and you got to put guys back in, and then even in normal play, right? And this is very specific to the NBA Cup, obviously, but I think it would probably have to be a major star gets injured from this, or a couple, maybe a couple, or like I think it would have to get to the point where it's like an undeniable disaster, be it teams complaining about it, or again a star player getting injured, where that would get them to reconsider whether they should should change it. But for now, I think they're going to ride with it. I do think it adds an element to games that kind of makes it more fun, of just like the score, like unless you're gambling on games, right? But like it's like the score really matters, and the differential really matters, and especially that like last game of pool play, you are now factoring in what's our point differential and how can we increase it. And so it does add like a competitive element that I like. And anytime there's a competitive element, that there is some risk of injury. But I think, again, something probably has to happen in a negative sense for them to realistically change it. So that would be, I mean, hopefully nothing happens, and hopefully maybe they just change it on their own and they decide it's too risky. But I think for now, they obviously put it in for a reason. I'm sure they had these conversations, calculated the risk, and they felt it was worth it. So are we to say? I mean, we can complain about it, and maybe again that gets them to change it. But I think for now they're going to roll with it. You can't see this. Hey, Jovan, what trade is more realistic, Vucevic or Kessler? Well, thank you for the super chat. I would say from a Lakers interest, like I think there's two different ways to look at this question. So which player is easier to get or more realistic to get? I would say it's Vucevic. I think that if the Lakers really wanted to get him, or if another team wanted to get him, he's gettable. Which player do the Lakers have more interest in? And therefore, what I say is more realistic would be Kessler, just because that's a guy that they've been linked to, recently by me and by other people. So I would say between these two, I would lean Kessler, while factoring in like Vucevic is more gettable. The price is going to be lower. So if it comes down to like the Lakers just decide they need a center and the Kessler price is too high for them to pull the trigger on it, then Vucevic I think is like a reasonable consolation prize. Though I think defensively he's not quite at the level, and that's my thing, is like some of these guys that they've been attached to, like Valanciunas and Vucevic. Vucevic is better than Valanciunas defensively, but they are both minuses, and they are big bodies. And like I think Valanciunas is a good post defender still, but they're drop coverage bigs, and if you could get them in space and force them to rotate and force them and even just have them as rim protectors, like those guys are not even adequate in those regards. Whereas guys like Kessler, Robert Williams, Clint Capella, I'm trying to think of what other bigs off the top of my head. Even Jakob Poeltl is a quality rim protector, though I think he's a little bit limited mobility wise. Like those guys are much better defenders, and I think sure, the Lakers could use another 7-footer in general, but I think that the key is getting the right 7-footer. And if you're just getting a big who can't really defend, I don't think you're really checking that box. Like maybe it's a better player than Jackson Hayes or Christian Wood, but is that worth a first with you also having some defensive concerns with that player? Like, again, maybe it depends on what's available, what's the price. Like there's always a lot of factors that go into these decisions and how we evaluate it. But for me, my issue with guys like Valanciunas and Vucevic is they're just not plus defenders. And the biggest need, like Jackson Hayes can be a productive offensive player. Christian Wood, when healthy, can be a good offensive player. Those guys have some defensive concerns. And I think the biggest need, it's not just another center, it's a defensive-minded, like, plus defender center. Big body or rim protector, ideally both. So getting a guy who's 6'11", 7 feet, but like doesn't check that box, to me is like, it's kind of a half measure. It's not a full, it's not fully checking the box. So I think, in addition to, again, like the Lakers having their own preference between these two, also Kessler's a much better defender. And I think if I'm the Lakers, like that's the type of player I'm prioritizing. Okay. I went a little bit over. Surprise, surprise. I will do... Okay, I'm seeing Bulls won't trade Vucevic unless they get AD. I do not agree with that. Okay, a couple more here. Kane Carter, Jovan, what are your thoughts on Colin Sexton? Do you think he can contribute, or is he a good player on a bad team? I think he can contribute in the right role. I think for the Lakers, you probably want him as the fourth option. I mean, depends on who you're giving up. You want him as the fourth option, though, behind AD, LeBron, and Austin, in my opinion. But if he kind of takes the Cam spot or the D'Lo spot, you can make a case either way. And he's more of like the fourth option offensively, and even sometimes the fifth if Rui's feeling it that night. Like, we're an hour in. I should have mentioned Rui finally had his first double-digit game, 19 points, 6 to 7 shooting since the fourth game of the season. So I think Rui, it's a late shout out, but Rui played well tonight, at least offensively. But I think Colin Sexton's more like a fourth, fifth guy. And I think he's had good moments defensively. Like I think we haven't really seen him in a winning ecosystem necessarily. So like he was a little premature in the Cleveland days, and then has been in Utah where they just haven't been very good. So I'd like to see him in a better ecosystem. And I think, yeah, I think he can win. I think it's kind of like Clarkson to me, where, and they're different players, but like it's sort of the same thing of like a lot of times these guys who put up big or good stats on bad teams, you got to reimagine your role and take a slight step back on a better team. But I think Sexton could do that. Mr. Matsuda, why is Drummond so good now? It's a funny question. I mean, I think Drummond, I think he's always kind of been this play. Like he's obviously gotten worse than his like all-star Detroit days, but he had good moments for the Lakers. I think that the issue was he wasn't quite what they needed defensively, and they looked, in my opinion, much better with Marc Gasol as a starting center, and then they promised Drummond a starting spot, and that whole thing got messed up. So I feel like Drummond's kind of been the same guy for a while. I think he has really good self-awareness. Like he's talked about it. He did a recent, or not even recent, but he talked to like a group of kids of maybe it was like 2 summers ago where he talked about bringing it every night and him kind of like coasting at times and letting go of the rope a little bit. And I'm paraphrasing here, but that he's sort of had to remember that like you're going to be out of the league soon and not have a job if you're not bringing it every night. So I think he's one of those guys who had a lot of natural gifts, a lot of natural athleticism, and I think he needed to be punched in the mouth a little bit, have his standing in the league go down, be making minimum contract money. And then now he's played much better the last 2-3 years and been one of the best backup centers in the league. Like he's one of those guys that's on that like 30-35 border where he's actually a quality backup. Jeremy Jizwinski, Jovan, aka only 10 more minutes. Haha, love you, bro. Love you too. I do tend to go over. You guys bring the great questions, and I love interacting with you guys. And Dark Galaxy, do you see the Lakers winning the group play for IST? Originally, no, but with Chet banged up or out, not even banged up. Hartenstein, I don't remember if he's going to be. I think he's still going to be out. KD's out. Lakers are out. Like, I mean, OKC and Phoenix were the two best teams in the West to start the season, up to this point. But KD out, Chet out. Then you got San Antonio and Utah. Lakers should go 4-0, in my opinion, in the group play if they're serious. And like, barring Shea could go for 40 on any given night. Devin Booker could go for 40 on any given night. So like maybe they go 3-1. But I'm gonna say yeah. You know what? I'm gonna say yeah. I will say they win the group play. I think if Chet were healthy and KD were healthy, I think they probably split those two. And then it kind of depends how those other teams do. But and maybe they lose both and go 2-2. Like Phoenix is playing really at a really high level. OKC is the best team in the West, in my opinion. So I could easily see them going 2-2 if those guys were healthy, but they're not. So I think they should go 4-0, at least 3-1 in the group play. And if they do that, they put themselves in a really good position to win the group. And so I will say, yeah. Andres Martinez, I'm at work and spending time on here. Thank you. I appreciate it. I appreciate you. Appreciate you spending time with us and getting paid to watch the stream. That is awesome. Dylan Neville and Brooks, Jovan, can the Lakers bring Robert Williams now? It's kind of similar to what I've been saying. Like it's more of a timing thing. I think right now Robert Williams is playing at such a high level. This is like the highest his value is going to be. And also Portland, I think, is being patient with their situation. So again, there's always a chance something happens, but I feel like it's still going to be a little bit. Kane Carter, did you ever see all-star potential in Rui? What stops him on the defensive side? I don't see all-star potential in Rui. I think Rui could be a really good starter, but I think all-star, he'd have to show. I mean, it's not going to happen on a team with LeBron and AD. It's also, I think he would need to play more consistently, right? Like that's always kind of been the thing with Ruiz. He just goes through these ebbs and flows. And then defensively, some guys, their athleticism doesn't translate laterally for whatever reason. And I feel like Rui's gotten better defensively since he's been in LA, but there's still like some athleticism, like lateral quickness limitations there, some decision-making limitations there, some effort limitations there. So I think Rui could be a really, really good starter, but I mean, all-stars, top 24 player in the league or top 12 in your conference, and I don't see that. Seeing some stuff about trades, no real trade updates other than seeing Reddish stuff. I agree. Reddish had some good, like Reddish is been helpful. I think tonight, for whatever reason, that the groups with Reddish just like didn't do that well, but I'm still, Cam's been exceeding expectations. He should remain the starter. So yeah. And then last one here from You Can't See This. Thoughts on the Joel Embiid situation. Thank you for the super chat. Do you think the 3-game suspension was enough? So I did answer this on a previous stream. I would assume you did not see that. But my 30-second thoughts, just because I gave like a 5-minute answer or so on this, was what the columnist wrote was inappropriate. There was no reason to bring up Joel's son or late brother. So I think Joel had every right to confront him. However, I think it's a workplace and we're kind of colleagues, kind of not colleagues. It's sort of a gray area, but like if you put your hands on a colleague or just another person, like if you work a 9 to 5, you work in an office or whatever, like you put your hands on someone in the office, there's going to be a consequence. Like for most people, they would just lose their job. Obviously, I'm not saying that with Embiid, and I'm not saying that, but you could also look at it from the inverse way of like, if a reporter put their hands on a player, that reporter would probably be banned from, would probably lose their NBA credentials forever and not be able to cover games in person and just be probably not banned from arenas, but be banned from locker rooms, be banned from having a credential. So I again, I'm not saying that should happen to Embiid, of course. I'm just more so pointing out, like, I think in the grand scheme, compared to other professions where if you potentially put your hand on someone, especially someone who, like, I would assume is a foot shorter and 100 plus pounds less than Embiid, like, he got off, I think, relatively easily. And again, I'm not even saying, I don't even think he should have been suspended for longer. I'm just more so saying, like, 3 games feels about right, I guess. It was, I thought he had every right to confront the report, the columnist, and again, it was inappropriate, and maybe that person should also have some sort of punishment. I'm not quite sure what, but or I wouldn't be surprised if the team's like, okay, don't come in the locker room for a couple of weeks, whatever. But you just can't put your hands on someone. Like it just takes it to a different level, and I think 1 to 3 games anywhere in between there is probably right. Okay, I'm going to end it here, though. I appreciate you all for watching and listening. For those on YouTube, please be sure to hit that subscribe button, turn on channel notifications, and like and comment on this stream. And for those watching, or excuse me, listening, we're getting late night time now. For those listening on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or your podcast platform of choice, please be sure to follow, download, and leave a 5-star review. I do see another super chat from You Can't See This. Says, "We love you, Jovan. Keep up the hard work." Thank you. I appreciate you. Appreciate you all for Late Night Gang. I feel like that's going to be the branding for this. Is this is the late night crew. We go late on game nights or early, depending on where you guys are in the world. But I appreciate you all for watching, listening, tuning in, asking questions, asking super chats, and let's keep this going. And I will talk to you Friday night. I will actually be back tomorrow with a new episode. Still figuring out what I'm going to be talking about, but that's get a good night of sleep and figure it out in the morning. But talk to you guys all soon. Thank you for watching.